Hi everyone, my name is Josie and tonight I'm going to be doing a cozy knit and chat where I'm going to talk through some of my goals and upcoming projects for 2024. Before I get into the goals portion of the video, I want to really quickly mention the project that I'm working on, which is the Puff and Go wrapper in this fun hot pink mohair by Hip Knit Shop. And I'm just finishing up the second sleeve and just doing a tube of stockinette. So let's get into it. Almost all of the other goals that I'm going to talk about in this video are either skills or techniques that I really want to improve upon to really deepen my knitting practice. And there's a couple sewing goals in there too, I think. But the first goal is a kind of separate from that, which is quitting fast fashion, which is something that I kind of think is going to be easy. We'll see if it actually is, but I feel like a lot of my clothes are secondhand, and then I've been supplementing my wardrobe with a lot of handmade items recently, and so I was feeling really inspired to just cut fast fashion out of my life altogether. So that is one of the biggest goals that I'm going to be focusing on in 2024. So for example, when I see something from a fast fashion website that I really like or think is really cute, instead of buying the fast fashion version, I'm going to try really hard to either find a secondhand version or, for things that are a little bit newer to the trend cycle, make my own, which I've done a couple of times. I talked about the pink gingham boxer shorts that I made, inspired by some 2023 trends last year. So I know that it is possible, and I think by making my own clothes, it's really something that causes me to slow down and reflect on if an item of clothing or a trend is something that actually matches my style, or if it's something that I just like because I'm seeing it everywhere. So that's my biggest goal for the year. I'll definitely do updates throughout the year as I kind of go on the journey of trying to quit fast fashion. So stay tuned to hear me talk about that more down the line. The next goal, getting more into the technique and skill-based goals, I really want to knit a cable knit sweater this year. I have a couple of different options for cable knit sweaters that have been really inspiring to me recently. I really like the Moby sweater by Petite Knit. I've seen a really beautiful version of it in a dark green that I would want to do. I think I have a couple store-bought cable knit sweaters in my closet already, but when I think about what versions of cable knit sweaters I would want to make, I'm seeing a lot of dark greens and dark browns. So it might be more of a fall winter 2024 project. But I'm thinking about either the Moby sweater. There's a front porch sweater, which is a little bit more of a simplistic repeating cable knit that I am also really interested in. And then of course the folklore cardigan. I'm not sure if I'm going to do the folklore cardigan. I really like the way that it looks, but I know that it takes a really long time, and I recently purchased the Speak Now cardigan, and if I was going to do the folklore cardigan, I think I would want to do it in a really light lavender color with some darker purple accents to be kind of like a Speak Now sweater. So those are some of the cable knit sweaters that I'm thinking about doing, but cabling is kind of a project that I do want to get a little bit more experience with before I jump into doing a full sweater. So I have a couple of cable knit headbands and things like that I might want to practice with before going into a full sweater. The other goal that I have, another skill-based goal that I have, which is actually inspired by the project that I'm working on right now, is learning German short rows. So if you didn't see my other video, I am working on the Puff and Go wrap top, but I ended up changing the sleeves so there's actually no puff to them because I was trying to learn how to do German short rows in this really fine mohair, and it was just really, I had already made a bunch of mistakes, and I just like felt kind of defeated by the project, and I wasn't feeling very inspired to keep going and like keep ripping back and trying again. So I really do, this year I want to conquer German short rows and really learn how to do that technique and do a couple of puff sleeves, and maybe someday I'll remake this, but I don't know. I just was not feeling really, it didn't feel worth it at the time to invest a bunch of time and energy into learning a new technique in a really difficult yarn for a pattern that I was no longer super excited about. And so I was really excited to like come up with the compromise of just like doing straight sleeves for this sweater, but I definitely do want to do some German short row related shaping in 2024. I have there are 2 different puff sleeves blouses that I have saved. I don't think either of them are on Ravelry, but I can include the Etsy links if you're interested in checking out either of those patterns. And then the next technique that I want to try is one that I have been seeing all over Instagram recently. I know that in 2023, there was a big push to get faster at knitting, and I think a lot of people seeing knitting content on Instagram and YouTube and just like feeling overwhelmed by how many knit garments people were able to produce. Everyone kind of wants to knit faster, and of course people are, I don't know, people struggle with ribbing, myself included, and so just the like switching back and forth between knitting and purling. So one technique I really want to try this year is Norwegian purling, basically just because it's supposed to help you be a little bit faster and find ribbing a little bit less tedious, and I feel like that would be really nice to have in my tool belt of knitting techniques. Along with Norwegian purling, another technique that I do want to try to get faster at knitting is knitting continental. So I am an English knitter. That was how I learned, and I have never tried knitting continental. I've heard mixed reviews from people who say that learning English and then trying to learn continental, it's not that much faster, but I'm just curious to try it. I'm not sure. I feel like honestly a project like this probably would be a good opportunity to try, but it's just something where I have to like sit down and like try to learn a new way of knitting. Another technique that I want to try that is less of something that is like I want a project in this technique and more like I want to know how to do this is double knitting. So I found a few cute double knitting patterns for pot holders, and then a really cute double knit headband by Starcross Knits. But I don't think like right now there are not a ton of double knit patterns that are on my wish list, but I just think it's a really cool skill and a really cool technique to have. And I feel like that's something where one of my other goals is to do my own colorwork pattern at some point in the year. I don't know, I'm leaving that really open-ended, so I'm not sure if that would be like a cowl or a sweater or like, I don't know, maybe even just a washcloth, who knows. But I feel like if I learn how to double knit before I try to do my own pattern, that could just open up more opportunities for different kinds of projects that I could work on. This is another technique that's like something that I want to know how to do, but not necessarily because there are projects that use this technique, is knitting a raglan. So I actually am really drawn to the drop shoulder look in sweaters, and like most of the sweaters that I've saved are drop shoulder sweaters, or like there are a couple of yoke sweaters, which is another one of my goals. But I just feel like raglan is just like a classic construction, and the fact that I don't know how to do it feels like it's something missing from my knitting skill set. So I have a couple of different raglan sweaters saved. I might just do something classic and just like a straight raglan sweater. There's also a really cute raglan cardigan that I have saved called the Dragonfly cardigan. So I might do that. That might be a little bit quicker and might resonate a little bit more just because it's something that I have already wanted to do before like deciding that I want to do a raglan sweater this year. Another technique that I want to learn is the provisional cast on. And that is because I, over the summer, purchased a pattern for the Vegas top and was immediately met with the provisional cast on. And so I bought the pattern and I like had the yarn and everything, and I ended up pivoting and not making that top because I like just did not have the mental capacity at the time to figure out how to do a provisional cast on. So I think that's a technique that I want to learn. Maybe with that top, I think it's a really cute summer basic. And if I run into anything sooner that has a provisional cast on, I think I need to just like learn how to do it. And hopefully it's one of those things that like once you do it, you can, I'm hoping that that will like lower the barrier from other projects. If I run into that in the future, I don't want to let that stop me from making whatever I want to make. Also, a technique that doesn't really have a pattern to go with it is just that I want to master a more advanced bind off technique. That's something that is also inspired by this project because this project calls for the Italian bind off, which was something that I was really struggling with when I was trying to learn how to do it in like teeny tiny mohair. It was so not forgiving. So I'm hoping that with some of my other projects in easier to work with yarns, I can try and hopefully get really good at some more advanced bind off techniques. I talked about this a little bit earlier, but another goal or another construction that I want to do this year is a yoke sweater. Just because again, I feel like that's a really classic construction, and the fact that I don't know how to do it feels like I'm missing a really big piece of my knitting skill set. And then another thing that I talked about earlier is doing my own colorwork design. I'm not really sure. I feel like I have a lot of little ideas floating around, but I haven't really sat down to figure out what it would actually look like to make my own colorwork design. I feel like I am always so inspired by beautiful colorwork knits that I see all over Instagram and Ravelry. And I just feel like it would be really, really cool to be able to make my own design in some way. One of the like few sewing goals that I have on my list is to do some sewing with stretch fabric. I did a little bit of work with stretch fabric in 2023, but it was kind of a fail. When I was working on the graduation dress, I just got the sizing totally wrong, and it was just kind of a bummer. And I have a couple of patterns that I really do want to make in stretch fabric. There's a top called the Emma top, I believe, which is, it kind of looks like a sewn version of blouse number 1 by My Favorite Things Knitwear, which is one of the tops that I might want to cast on after I finish my current works in progress. But I would love to be able to sew more like everyday basics. I think especially as I'm trying to quit fast fashion, I think it'd be really useful to be able to sew with stretch fabric, because I think sewing with only woven fabric is definitely a big limitation. And I feel like once I can master like jersey and t-shirt fabric, I'll be able to do a lot more with my sewing. A goal that I have that I'm leaving like very open-ended is design a pattern. I'm learning a little bit about how to do pattern design in Illustrator, and that's for sewing. And then obviously I talked about wanting to do some color work. And so I don't know really what designing a pattern is going to look like for me at the end of the year, but that's just something that I want to focus on because I've been doing a lot of knitting other people's patterns, and I think it would be really cool to design something of my own. And one of the other sewing goals that I have is to do some make your own gear, which is just like sewing outdoor related items. A lot of people do really, really cool stuff. I've seen like tents and backpacking backpacks and really cool things like that. But I don't trust my sewing skills that much yet. Like I would not want to be out in the backcountry and only have something that I had sewn and have it totally fall apart. So I want to start kind of on the small side, with like some compression sacks or like chalk bags or things like that. I do have this pattern that I thrifted for a fleece quarter zip, kind of like the Patagonia quarter zips. And I really do, that's something that I really want to make. So hopefully that will be one of my makes this year. But I left it kind of open-ended. So just making something that I can wear for outdoor recreation. A goal that I have that is a little bit ambitious that I'm trying not to get like too caught up in is starting a quilt or a blanket. I kind of left that open-ended as well. And I made sure to write start and not finish just because blankets obviously are very time-intensive projects. And I think part of the reason why I think it would be nice to start a blanket in 2024 is because I kind of struggle with having works in progress and like long-term projects. I'm someone who really likes kind of that instant gratification projects, and things that I can finish within a relatively short time frame. I mean, obviously I'm knitting, so it's not super instant gratification, but I feel like it would be good for me to kind of do something that's a bit more of a long-term project where I start it and I know that I'm not going to get the final result for like months, if not over a year. I have a couple of different blankets and quilts that I have been really inspired by as well. I talked about this in my last video, but I really do want to do a quilt with the Ohio Star quilt block. And I think I've seen a couple of pictures. I think I would want to do like a blue and white fabric, and I think it would be so nice. It would be obviously a very long-term project, but I think it would be so cool someday to have a quilt that I made on my bed. I made a quilt in 2023, but it was a lap size quilt, so it's not really big enough for the bed that I have. So I think it'd be really cool to do a quilt that I could actually use every day. And then I also have a couple of other blankets that I've been really inspired by, like the Copenhagen building block. I think it had kind of a big moment earlier this year. I've had it saved for a while, and I've actually made two of the blocks when I was really, really in the beginning of my knitting journey. So all of the stitches are twisted, so obviously would not use those for a blanket, but at least I know how to do it, and I have the pattern already. So that's one that I might try to start in 2024. Going back to the like technique related goals, I really want to try brioche and or fisherman's rib this year. I don't really have a lot of patterns that are saved currently that have brioche in them, and it's hard to tell if it's like I've been avoiding those patterns because I can't do brioche, or if I'm like avoiding brioche because I don't have any patterns that I like that involve that stitch. But I think I found a couple of cute and small projects today that I feel like would be a good way to practice and just like know how to do it in the case that I do encounter a sweater or something that I really like that does have brioche. The last like sewing related goal is that I would love to sew a wedding guest dress, because I feel like that's something where it requires a little bit more skill than like a regular dress, but it's obviously not as like when you're a guest at a wedding, you can kind of like blend into the crowd a little bit. And so it's like there's room. It doesn't have to be perfect. Like it's not a wedding dress. It's a wedding guest dress. But it would be a chance to like work with some nicer fabrics or like some more formal constructions than I'm used to. And I feel like it's nice to have like an occasion and a deadline. I feel like that's something that is quite helpful for me and really helps me to prioritize certain projects. I have a couple of ideas for patterns based on things that I have saved, but the wedding in question isn't until September, so I have time to think about it. And then the very last goal that I have for 2024 is to keep making videos. I had a lot of fun making my first video, and I have a lot of ideas for other videos to keep making. And I'm really excited to grow the community and just keep sharing my projects and like talking to people and getting to know other crafters. So I'm hoping to really do a lot more of that in 2024. Yeah, that is everything that I am really focusing on for the next year. It seems like a lot, like especially reading all of that out, it feels like maybe I took on a little bit too much. But I really want to try. I really wanted to leave it open-ended, and I don't know. That's why I wanted to focus on like techniques and things like that other than instead of specific projects, because I have a lot of those saved as well. But I really wanted to focus on like technique and building my skill and really hoping to move from beginner to like a little bit more intermediate in the next year. Those are all of my goals for 2024. I'd love to hear what you're working on, so please feel free to leave a comment and let me know what creative projects you have going in the new year. I'll see you next time. Bye.